In fact, let's hone in on that headline story now. The full picture of cancer prevalence in South Africa is still unclear, and this is due to underreporting and gaps in the registry. Now, for the first time, the National Institute for Communicable Diseases is collaborating with NGO Living with Cancer and the National Cancer Registry to come up with the country's first patient-led cancer registry. For more on exactly what this looks like, let's bring in Dr. Mazvita Muchengeti, who is the head of the National Cancer Registry, and Belinda Wagner, who is the founder of Living with Cancer. To both of our guests, thanks very much indeed for coming on. It's great to have you with us to discuss what is an incredibly important story. Dr. Muchengeti, I want to begin with you, because do we not rely on our doctors and those specialists treating people living with cancer to get accurate data on those who are fighting cancer?
Thank you very much for having us. Firstly, the National Cancer Registry is a pathology-based registry, which means that we directly pull our data from the labs that are diagnosing cancer, and we do not rely on clinicians reporting the cancers. But this creates a gap, because there are cancers that are diagnosed by other means. Cancers where a pathology report is not available, where having a tumor marker and clinical symptoms and radiological tests can give you a conclusion that a cancer has occurred. And as a result, our current stats are underestimating cancers. So to get around this, we then decided that we would work together with Living with Cancer, which is a patient-led registry, so that patients are given a voice and are able to register their own cancers. And we'll then use this data to compare it with what we have to see where the gaps are in terms of cancer surveillance. And then we can revise our surveillance systems after the gaps that have been highlighted by the data that comes from Living with Cancer.
Yeah. So you say the National Cancer Registry is a pathology-based registry. So that's lab-based, as you said, Dr. Muchengeti. So it means that our doctors who are diagnosing cancer outside of the lab do not feed that information to the registry. Dr.
Yes,
Muchengeti?
that is true.
Yeah.
We have sentinel population-based registries. Yes. So yes, that is true. We have sentinel population-based registries. So, for example, in Ekurhuleni district, we have surveillance officers, actually hospitals, hospices, mortuaries, to collect cancer data. Then and also in KwaZulu-Natal. But in terms of systematically the whole country, we do not have a population-based registry where we have cancers that are diagnosed by other means coming to the registry. And in addition, sometimes the records that come to us are incomplete. So, for example, national ID will be not added, maybe because the person who collected the information did not collect detailed demographic information. We will also not know sometimes the population group of a person. And all this information is very important because national ID helps us to remove duplicates and only count each cancer once. And the population groups help us to see the differences and the disparities in cancer across the different South African population groups, so that we can be able to inform the people at risk how the risk is in the various population groups.
Right. Dr. Belinda Wagner, is the founder of Living with Cancer, and it sounds, Belinda, like this is actually long overdue. These gaps are quite significant, as Dr. Muchengeti describes them.
Absolutely. So being a cancer survivor myself, when I was diagnosed, I was looking for information, and my cancer wasn't even recorded at the time. So absolutely huge gap, and as patients we definitely can do our bit by submitting our data, and obviously to help grow the registry so that we can get more accurate data and decision making.
So cancer support organizations say that cancer cases are massively underreported, in some cases by roughly 40%, Dr. Muchengeti. How do you think that happens? How do you think that's possible?
So particularly because of the pathology registry, we have cancers like breast cancer that are well biopsied because they are readily accessible in terms of biopsy, and oftentimes a diagnosis is never made without a histological confirmation. But there are other cancers that do not necessarily need a histological confirmation to be diagnosed. I'll give liver cancer as an example. Just using radiology and a tumor marker and the clinical picture, a clinician can come to the conclusion that a liver cancer has occurred. And sometimes they have cirrhosis, so it's not possible to actually biopsy even if you want to. So for cancers like that, they are grossly underestimated within our registry. But when we look at cancers like breast cancer, we know that we're very close to the true picture because we've compared our breast cancers to hospital registries to see what hospital registries have and what we have, and we've seen that it's very close to what we have. But for other cancers, we know for sure when we look at the mortality of liver cancer in South Africa, we see that that is reported by Stats South Africa. We see that there are more deaths in liver cancer than we have reported as instance.
Yeah.
So we know that we are way below what is expected. And because of these gaps, so it's variable by cancer. So we want every cancer to be counted. So we are asking then patients to participate in cancer surveillance because right now a lot of patients have cell phones and are informed and might be actually be able to help us to a large extent.
Yeah. So the full picture of cancer prevalence in South Africa is, because of the gaps that you've outlined, still very unclear. So Belinda, getting patients involved in this cancer registry, what kind of information would they be adding to this picture so that we can get a clearer picture?
So what's important, it's a portal, it's a mobile-friendly portal, and we've replicated what the National Cancer Registry collects. So our form is identical to the form that the NICD collects, and I think what's important is we as patients can drive that information, and it's the typical information, a little bit about you and your who you are, and then obviously about your cancer. Again, that information is fed straight into the National Cancer Registry, and they utilize that data to help them with some of the decision making that's required.
Right. And the Living with Cancer patient-led registry is ready to be used, right? It's up and running. The portal is open. Have you had any kind of sense of the response? Are people definitely logging on?
Absolutely. So it's up and ready and it's working well. You literally just go to URL livingwithcancer.sa.co.za and you go in and you register and you add your data. And yes, it's been very well received. What's interesting about the world of cancer as patients, we're ready to share because we understand the journey and we understand what it's like to go through not having access information and the whole journey itself. So most individuals are very happy to share. It is confidential, and again, the National Cancer Registry has access to it, so we don't use your information for anything else.
Yeah. Dr. Muchengeti, once we are able to get a clearer picture of cancer in South Africa, how will the way we do things now? How do you reckon it will change?
So the purpose of the data that we collect is to help the Department of Health prioritize cancers, to say, okay, according to the most common cancers, which ones are contributing the larger part of the burden and how do we control these? So these are used for interventions that can be used. And also if an intervention has been put in place, these are also used to check if that intervention is working. This information is also used for resource allocation. So, for example, right now we know that we are underestimating cancers. So these are the figures that are then used for resource allocation to say, okay, in this province, if this the amount of cancers occurring, so this is how many doctors we need. These are how many machines for treating this particular cancer that we need. So we need to have correct information so that our policymakers and the department can be able to make decisions based on data and not on an underestimate.
And I suppose, Belinda, as well, just as a parting shot, it's not only about policy, but perhaps on, the kind of advice that we are giving to people living with cancer.
No, absolutely. So part of what we're doing is the more information you have, the better decisions you can make, but also it's individuals living with cancer. So once you're being diagnosed, you live with cancer for the rest of your life. And what's that journey like? So it's gathering that information. So some of the other more nuances that you may have not considered. So 100%.
Yeah, absolutely. To both of our guests, Dr. Mazvita Muchengeti, who is the head of the National Cancer Registry, which is housed with the NICD, and Belinda Wagner is the founder of Living with Cancer. If indeed you are living with cancer yourself, there's the website there for that portal. It is livingwithcancersa.co.za. It is the first patient-led registry that's been launched in South Africa.